Hello, welcome to a review of Spider-Man No Way Home, the latest Marvel Sony movie. I had the fortune of seeing this movie with my friends on Saturday, Friday, I don't remember, earlier this weekend, and now I'm reviewing it. I also need to review Hawkeye at some point. There will be a review of that coming soon. I don't know when, because I'm going out of town later today, and I keep looking over there because I keep thinking somebody's going to interrupt my take because I'm supposed to be packing right now, and I will be packing. But first, I need to talk about Spider-Man before I go out of town. Maybe I'll have to find some room to hole up in and talk about Hawkeye while I'm out of town, or I'll just wait till I get back. It doesn't really matter. But Spider-Man. That's what we're here to talk about today. Marvel's on a roll right now. We're being swamped with Marvel content, which should be a bad thing, but, you know, how am I trying to say this? I'm like stumbling over my words a little bit. It's hard to be mad about being swamped with Marvel content when it's content this good. Alright, we're going into the review. Spider-Man No Way Home is great. Like, surprisingly great. I thought it was going to be fun. You know, they're bringing in these classic Spider-Man villains, possibly classic Spider-Man heroes. You know, the whole Spider-Man lineage to this movie. And so I was like, oh, this is going to be... I knew it was going to be fun. I thought it was going to be fun, but I thought it would be a little crowded. I thought maybe Doctor Strange would have too much screen time. I was expecting a Marvel movie. I feel like with Marvel, I sort of default back to a base cynicism after a certain point. After a certain amount of time without consuming new Marvel content, I return to a base cynic point, and then I go to see the movies, and I'm pleasantly surprised. But this one had a lot to live up to, so I was like, is it going to? And it absolutely did. I don't know how they did, but they delivered not just one of the best Marvel movies, but also one of the best Spider-Man movies. Like, personally, I watched the Sam Raimi, the original Spider-Man movie trilogy over the summer, and I don't think there's any one movie in that trilogy that I like more than No Way Home. The trilogy as a whole is better than, like, MCU Spider-Man, Tom Holland Spider-Man. But the individual movie, not so much. No Way Home is really good. I think it's better than Infinity War, and that was the last big event Marvel movie that I was like, uh-oh, this is going to be mediocre, and then it was actually very good. This is better than that. The movie is, I'm gonna not talk spoilers at first, but I'll dive into spoilers. I'll dive into more detailed spoilers in a little bit. Let me just address some of the concerns I had when watching the trailer and how I felt they weren't. So, in the past two Spider-Man movies within the MCU, Tom Holland, Peter Parker, Spider-Man, has always felt kind of like he's a second fiddle to, like, an Avenger sidekick Spider-Boy, you know? Like, it's a common complaint, plenty of people have it. It doesn't bother me that much, but it is something that kind of detracts from the movie, where he's kind of fighting these low-level villains, and the conflict is all about, how am I gonna live up to Tony Stark, guys? And it's just kind of, like, not interesting. I think this movie fixes that hardcore. Like, again, without spoilers, I'm going to say that by the end of this movie, you are like, okay, this isn't Spider-Boy anymore. This is Spider-Man, and, like, a worthy Spider-Man. They finally sold me on Tom Holland Spider-Man after 3 movies. But still, they really sold me on it. The other concern that I had watching the trailers, though, was that this one was gonna, it was kind of in line with that previous concern. It was that this would feel like a Doctor Strange movie, because he was in so much of the marketing. He had all these weird lines, let's Scooby-Doo this crap in the marketing. Like, I'm just like, that isn't funny. Why are we focusing on Doctor Strange and Spider-Man's friends? Like, give me the good stuff. The good stuff is absolutely in there. They just kept it out of the trailers. The marketing for this movie was actually really good about, like, you could get a general outline of the plot if you watched all the trailers, a really general one, but how things like, how beat A gets to beat B, and, you know, how Act 1 gets to Act 2 gets to Act 3, and, like, the beats we go through are not expected. And there are some things that the marketing didn't show that will surprise or delight you, depending on how well you've been keeping up with Marvel news. So Doctor Strange is really not, back to my original point that I lost track of in my wandering mind. Doctor Strange is not as big a focus in the movie as I thought. He pretty much gets written out like around the midway point, and then doesn't come back until like the end of the third act. So it's very much a Spider-Man movie with Spider-Man characters and a real like focus on Peter Parker. Happy is barely even there. The Iron Man's buddy that was like he's barely even involved. It's very much a Spider-Man movie and a really, really good Spider-Man story too. The villains are great. It's so nice to have like Mysterio and Vulture are like good villains by MCU standards, but meh villains by normal standards. This movie throwing in a bunch of villains that are not MCU and were established in other movies is a genius choice because they're way better than like most MCU villains are. Green Goblin is incredible. Doc Ock is incredible. They were some of the standouts of their original Spider-Man series, and they're arguably even better here. I think Green Goblin is even stronger here than he was in Spider-Man 1. Electro is also good. Sandman and Lizard are kind of there, but, you know, like, they're not bad. Nobody sticks out like a sore thumb in this movie. Nobody's giving a bad performance. Everybody just seems excited to be back. And there are other characters that also give surprisingly good performances. But more than anything, it wasn't all the like cameos and the references and the like throwbacks and, you know, all the fan service. That's the word to put it. It wasn't the fan service that made this one of the best Marvel movies. It was the really tight plot. It's not a perfect plot. It's not a perfect movie. I don't think the MCU can do a 10 out of 10 movie. Like, I'd be surprised if they could pull that off. But it's like 9 out of 10 for me. Very, like, perfectly put together. The way the plot plays out is just, like, it's kind of genius in that it made me go, oh, wait, I never even thought about that. Whoa, they're doing that? Whoa, like, it was just really, really good. And the conclusion is satisfactory. Oh, it's so hard to talk about it without spoilers. I think we're going to have to go into spoilers now. But rest assured, if you've ever liked any of the Spider-Man series, not just the MCU one, but if you were a fan of the OG series or, for some reason, The Amazing Spider-Man with Andrew Garfield, you'll like this movie. You will like this movie. If you like Spider-Man stories, you will really like this movie. It's one of the best Spider-Man stories I've seen on screen. I actually think story-wise, it's better than Into the Spider-Verse, although Into the Spider-Verse is a more artistically creative movie. So yeah, go see No Way Home. And now I'm going into spoiler territory, so click off the video if you don't want to get spoiled. The obvious big spoiler, here we go. Yes, Andrew Garfield and Tobey Maguire's previous versions of Spider-Man are absolutely in the movie. They are introduced towards the end of the second act, and I don't know, the way they're introduced is really good. Like, basically Ned is like trying to get a hold of Peter Parker, and he discovers he can use Doctor Strange's magic thing that they took, and he like summons a portal, and through the portal you can see it's clearly not Tom Holland's Spidey suit. That was a fun experience with friends. Like, that's not Tom Holland's Spider-Man. And then Tobey Maguire just casually walks through another portal wearing like a sweater. That's great. Andrew and Tobey have such a great dynamic off of each other, but more importantly, they actually like serve a purpose in the narrative other than giving backup to the main Spider-Man. they also serve as kind of mentor characters to help Tom Holland's Spider-Man after major spoiler that was not leaked, unlike, I mean, maybe it was leaked somewhere, but it wasn't all over the internet like the Andrew Garfield, Tobey Maguire one. Aunt May gets Uncle Ben. That was something I did not expect, and it was I mean, I'm not going to act like it was some crazy, mind-blowing twist, but it was a serious, emotional, dramatic scene and conflict in an MCU movie that landed really well, and there were multiple scenes like that. This movie didn't have as much of that, like, tonal dissonance struggle that Marvel so often struggles with. The problem, Hey, I'm good. Fuck it, I'm not cutting that out. I'm just gonna finish this. Where was I? Yeah, I'm supposed to be packing, so I'm just gonna finish this. The Green Goblin is so good. And not just as the Green Goblin, but also as, like, Norman. I didn't even think about that when I came into the movie, that they would use the whole split personality Norman Osborn Green Goblin thing to, like, make a really compelling story. Because basically he shows up as the Green Goblin, then he becomes Norman, and he is kind of an emotional part of the movie for a little bit. He's the one that convinces Peter Parker. Oh my god, excuse me. I don't know what that was. This is chaos. He's the one that convinces Peter Parker that the villains can be, like, saved instead of having to be sent back to their universe. What the hell is wrong with my voice? Which is another cool thing that I really like about this movie. It's not kill the bad guys or defeat the bad guys. They have a box that can send everybody back to their universes at any time. And they don't use it. They, like, fight and they win and they cure everybody of their like, superpowered chaoses. Starting with Doc Ock, they cure him, then Norman turns, and that's fantastic. The whole sequence of Norman turning and the Spidey sense going off, and he's like, something's wrong, and then he's Green Goblin, and Willem Dafoe is giving an A+ freaking performance in this movie. So is Alfred Molina as Doc Ock, but he's mostly given his good guy side to show. Green Goblin gets to go. They were smart. They knew he was the center villain. He would do the damage. He's the one who kills Aunt May. He's the one who really hurts Spider-Man. And the whole sequence of him going villain and fighting Spider-Man. No Green Goblin mask this time. Just Willem Dafoe getting punched and he's, like, laughing. This character is his Joker. Like, it's an incredible performance. I think if Heath Ledger could get an Oscar nom for the Joker, I think he could. I think Willem Dafoe's performance was actually Oscar worthy. It was very, very good. And Doc Ock is great too. I love how his octo arms they're nanotech, so they, like, fuse with the Iron Man tech, and then Spider-Man is able to control them. Like, of course, that makes perfect sense, and it's a perfect way to neutralize it. There were so many writing choices that I was just like, oh yeah, that is an element from those old movies, and that makes perfect sense to include. Like, oh my gosh, this is genius writing. And the way that the Spider-Man have to counsel Peter after Aunt May dies, like, that's such a dramatic scene. My voice is cracking up a little bit because it really is top tier filmmaking. Not just, good for Marvel, like B+. Like, I think it's a really good movie. And I think you kind of need, like, previous you need some level of Spider-Man exposure, or I don't know how well you're going to care. But if you've seen, like, any of the Spider-Man, they do every Spider-Man justice, including Andrew Garfield's. They really, like, he's probably the one with the most to prove, and he comes in and gives, like, a really... He gives one of the higher performances. But Tobey Maguire's Spider-Man is just kind of the older brother. That's like the dad/older brother that's just kind of vibing and hanging out with the crew, and he's great in that role. There's a lot of... And the end of this movie, too, when Spider-Man is, like, punching the Green Goblin, he's about to kill Green Goblin and Tobey Maguire blocks him, and they just have this intense emotional stare down. There's so much good drama in this movie. I did not expect Spider-Man No Way Home to have a compelling, emotional story. And the conclusion of Spider-Man having to make everyone forget that he's Peter Parker is also like... It allows the character to kind of start... Like, we essentially have a 3-movie origin story where this is where the big origin story beat's going on, and they can kind of reset Spider-Man now. Like, he doesn't have to be so MCU intertwined, because we have a new Spider-Man who's not getting all his tech from Tony Stark, and like now nobody remembers that Peter Parker is Spider-Man anymore, so he gets this new start, and it's like, I don't know, it's powerful. Some powerful stuff about, like, more than most superhero movies, this one I buy into its discussion of, like, what makes a hero, why does a hero make the right, because more than almost any other superhero movie I've seen, the heroes are constantly, Spider-Man is constantly making the hard choice that is also the right choice. The hard choice to not just, boop, send all the villains back to their universe. The hard choice to not kill Green Goblin, who killed Aunt May, and instead cure him so that he goes back to being Norman. The hard choice to make all of his friends forget him and everyone forget him to keep the multiverse from falling apart. Like, it's very high concept, fan servicey superhero stuff, but they managed to craft it into a really compelling and, like, interesting story that finally, I think, made me love Spider-Man the way that some of my friends who were already really into Spider-Man do. Like, it made me invested. Every time, man, every time I'm getting Marvel fatigue, they're like, here's one of the best things we've made. Here's us outdoing ourselves, somehow. I don't know how they do it. And if anything, I have more, and each time it happens, I have more of an appreciation for what they're doing. I also think Hawkeye is quite good. We'll get a review of that soon. I desperately need to pack. Arrivederci.